Hello, hello. My goodness, I look as tired as I feel. I'm absolutely exhausted today. Hi everyone, it's Alison McGinley, and yeah, this is day 5. So the last day of the training. Sunday, we're going to do a sort of question and answer, where I'll put together all the sort of comments and do a sort of closing ceremony, I suppose, would be the best way to describe it. Today, however, we're talking about tools and solutions. So, so this week we have, just to recap briefly, we touched on what is emotional abuse, how to identify it, how to identify it in yourself, and how to identify it when you're on the receiving end of it, the different types of emotional abuse that we've come across, the way it's, the way it makes you feel, that awful, heart-wrenching self-doubt, self-loathing, confusion, second-guessing, questioning, that just not being good, just not understanding what's happening, not understanding which way to turn, not understanding if it's you, is it you? Or is it actually, is the world just mad? And it doesn't matter whether it's a narcissistic, systematic abuse, well thought out, premeditated abuse, or whether it's that subconscious type that we were talking about, the passive aggressiveness, or the absolute gut reaction, the visceral reaction that comes from us all when we're in fear, when we're feeling inferior, when we're looking for different ways of saving our skin, if you like, of really not showing too much of ourselves. That is what we've been looking at, the emotional abuse that really comes from that place of not wanting to expose our vulnerabilities and going to any lengths to save ourselves, if you like, to cover our ass, to keep our mask firmly in place. And that isn't in any way to underestimate the damage that it can cause when you're on the receiving end of that type of abuse, of psychological or emotional abuse. The one thing that we didn't touch on is verbal abuse. Now, so I've just received money. Isn't that cool? Just as I'm sitting talking, money's appearing into my bank account. That is very lovely. And only today I was thinking about manifesting, and I was thinking, there is money coming in, and I don't know where it's coming from, but I'm very open to receiving it. And there it is. As I click on here, it turns up. And it's completely thrown me. Where was I? What was I talking about? So yeah, not to underestimate the power of emotional abuse. What we didn't, and yeah, that's what I was saying, verbal abuse. Now, something I touched on right on the very first day is what emotional abuse isn't. And emotional abuse isn't, somebody screaming and shouting at you in the midst of an argument, or someone disagreeing with you. That's not what emotional abuse is. However, if we look at it from a verbal perspective, it is when somebody is constantly undermining you, little comment here or a little comment there, or when somebody is screeching hysterically to the point that you cannot make yourself heard or understood, that you're not given that space to express yourself. That is emotional abuse. That very much is, and that can come from us, or it can be received onto us. Now, today we're looking at solutions to that. Now, it's quite sad today. I thought maybe at this time somebody would pop on live, but nobody has yet. So I'm kind of stalling a little bit to see if someone does, and then I'll get started. But I don't want to waste your time. I don't want that if you're watching this on replay, you've got to wait for me to get started. So I'll go for it. Hi, somebody has popped on. Excellent. Just tell me who you are so I can say hello. And if you get, and you've gone again. If you get any questions, of course, do ask. So, tools and solutions. Well, the very, very first place to start with this is recognizing the behavior. And this is very bright, and I'm probably, let me see. Is that better for you? I don't know. Yeah, maybe that's a bit better for you. The very, very first place that we need to start, of course, is recognizing the behavior, recognizing it and not dismissing it. And that's, in as much as often when we feel, I said right at the beginning of the week, women ask me, mostly because I work with women, I'm sure men would ask me the same thing, but women ask me, is this okay? Is this normal? Because you've lost touch with with what is normal, what is good behaviour, what is bad behaviour. When you go through a period, and it can be a period of weeks or days or months or even years of this type of abuse, it becomes so ingrained in your relationship, the fabric of your relationship, that it's very difficult to differentiate between normal behaviour and an abusive behaviour. One example, it's not exactly emotional abuse, but one example is a client of mine in the States was talking about how she believed her car may well have been had a tracker device put on it by her husband to keep track of where she was going and what she was doing. Now, for her, she said, but is that okay? Is that normal? Of course, she understood it wasn't normal, but is that something that, where would that fall in the grand scheme of things? Now, if that same thing happened in the UK, the perpetrator would, if found, be caught and put in prison because it's an invasion of your privacy. It is classed as abuse. So, it can be something as serious as that. Hi, Monica. It can be something as serious as that people just don't recognise as abuse because you've been worn down for such a long time that you can't actually put your finger on it. So the very first place to start is recognition, and that can be accepting your own feelings. So again, something I've said every video, I think, is when you have, when you're asking yourself or when you're asking someone else, is this right? Is this wrong? Is this abuse? If you're asking yourself the question, then most likely it is. And that's fine. You've identified it. And the purpose of this isn't to put a wedge between you and your partner, or you and whoever is on the other side of it, because this emotional abuse can be perpetrated from anywhere. Seen often in romantic relationships, but also in familial relationships, work relationships, friendships. We all have that slightly toxic friend that gives us the backhanded compliments that we're never quite sure, was it a mistake or not a mistake? Did she mean to say it like that or not? Sorry, I'm trying to get the light right because I can see that. Is that better? I'm not sure if that's better or not. Bear with me a second. For me, I look a bit like Morticia at the moment. I think I look a bit like Morticia anyway. I can't wait to get to bed. I'm so tired. I don't do partying well. So yeah, the abuse can come from anywhere at all. The important thing is to recognise that it's happening. And the way you recognise it is, does it feel right? No. Does it feel wrong? Yes. Well, in which case, it's something I'm not comfortable with. Now, it doesn't mean by any stretch of the imagination that it's the end of that relationship. It is, more often than not, a really bad pattern of communication that may have occurred over time, that the relationship may have started with that. I was talking to somebody the other day, and she was talking about how grateful she was when she and her partner first got together. She was very grateful. She was overweight. She was uncomfortable in her own skin, and her partner kind of turned up like a knight in shining armour and accepted her, warts, weight and all. And she kind of made a decision to do everything in her power to keep him happy because she was so grateful at the fact that he had accepted her. Of course, what happened then? Thank you. Some days I feel beautiful, some days I feel beautifully tired, and today's a beautifully tired day. But what actually happened in her case was this desire to give back, this desire to show her gratitude kind of backfired, because it turned from them having an equal and loving relationship to her being on that sort of people-pleasing side of the the scale. She started people pleasing not because she had low self-esteem or any such thing, but because she wanted to give back. But slowly, the dynamic of the relationship changed because she was always giving. She was never saying no. Something I recognise in my own marriage, actually, that I didn't ever say no. And I could have done. It wasn't that my husband ever made me, feel that I couldn't. It was me. It was on my shoulders. And she was explaining that this was the case, and it got to the point that there was a huge amount of resentment on her side because she was giving and giving and giving, and he was taking and taking and taking. And then it started, with snidey comments that, he would say, well, you should be grateful that I'm with you because you're overweight or because of this or because of that. So she kind of created the pattern herself. And when she could actually sit back and see that that was the case, and she could trace it back to this, this desire to please him as a thank you for accepting her, she was able to say, well, this isn't working. This isn't the relationship that I signed up for. It wasn't the relationship that he signed up for. It wasn't what we promised each other. I'm going to have to do something about it. How do I do it? So she started to withdraw a little bit. She was able to communicate with them why she was doing it rather than just pulling away completely. She actually communicated the reason that she felt that she had to find boundaries. It wasn't to push him away by any stretch of the imagination. It was because the relationship had turned into something that neither of them were anticipating. So all that story to tell you, to say, once you've identified that there is a problem, you find out where it started and what you need to do to actually make the changes. And this works, this works both ways. Are you the aggressor, if you like, or are you on the receiving end? If you're on the receiving end, again, it's very much about finding out, how you can put boundaries in place, how you can communicate those boundaries in a safe way, in a comfortable way, without putting pressure on the relationship and without putting that energy of I need you to change onto the other person. Because when you go in with that needy energy, you either get stonewalled where it's completely ignored, or you get a really defensive, and from a defensive place, who knows what's going to happen? Who knows? But at some point, the other partner will come out fighting, and it will feel tough, it will feel rough, it will feel painful, and that wasn't your intention in the first place. So being very clear on what it is that you're trying to communicate, and the reason why you're trying to communicate. And if it is that you need to desperately change behaviour, be completely transparent with it. I often say that it's the energy, it's not the words that we use, it's the energy behind it. If the energy behind it is, I need you to change, this is an ultimatum, then be completely transparent, be clear. Don't play about with words. Don't try to, don't play the same game in reverse. What about the other side of it? Hi, Kay. What about the other side of it? What if you have been watching all week and say, oh my God, that is me. That's my go-to. That's my defense mechanism. Again, what can you do about it? How are you going to manage that? Same thing. It's about recognizing the behavior. It's about recognizing the why behind the behavior and making, thank you. I'm assuming you're saying that I always look beautiful because you're big-headed I am. Who's in? Kayo? No. Okay. Shift. Keep moving. So yeah, exactly the same principle. Why am I giving this out? What is it? And I can guarantee without a shadow of a doubt that the reason that this behavior has come about is something lacking in us, some behavior, some fear or lack of self-worth or lack of self-love within ourselves. So again, it's about taking a step back and looking inwards and trying to work out where this came from. And of course, I say that as if it's an easy job, as if it's something you do. You take a pen and pencil and off you go. 10 minutes later, you've journaled it and it's all out. It's like peeling an onion. You start and you get a little bit of understanding and you get comfortable in your own skin again, and you get comfortable setting boundaries with that understanding. and then something else happens. You go deeper and deeper and deeper. And I think, once we're on that path, there is no end to it. It's not that we suddenly step off the path and we give up. There's always going to be learning to be had, and there's always going to be another layer to come off. But the very first place is, what is it in me? And I know, two people that are on here live, I'm preaching to the converted here. It's not that I'm telling you anything that you wouldn't tell me when I'm in that space. But for anyone listening afterwards, it's being gentle with yourself. That is the place that actually what I've got is a workbook on that, and I'll drop that in after. That's come into my mind now. It's really about being gentle on yourself, because we can't go inside. The reason we've not done it to date is because our head's telling us all sorts of horrible stories, dreadful stories about where we're lacking, how we're lacking, etc., etc., etc. And that causes fear that says, do not look within, because goodness knows, if that's what I know up here, what am I going to find when I go within? I'm only going to get the courage to open up and look within when I've started that journey towards building a relationship with myself, building a loving relationship with myself. And that is acknowledging that you're not perfect. Sorry, girls, we're not. But actually, there's a huge relief in that, because if I'm not perfect, I don't have to be perfect. So I can just start working on accepting what is. And what is pretty damn perfect. It wasn't created by us. We just arrived here with all this lovely stuff in us. So we can accept that God made us, or the universe made us, or source made us, or whoever it is that you get up in the morning and you thank for having another chance at life, made us exactly as we are for a very good reason, because we were given everything we need to live the best life we possibly have. So we don't have to question that. We don't have to fight it. We just have to accept, I am perfect as I am for the journey that I'm here to take. The relief. I don't need to fight that anymore. And from there, we gently go inside. We start to learn about, what we like, why we behave in a certain way. And none of it's about beating ourselves up. None of it is about saying, and I'm bad and I'm evil and I'm, it's about learning so that we can do better. Accepting that we did the best we could with what we have. And now I can do better because I know better. And this time tomorrow, I'll know a little bit more. And this time next year, I'll be a huge pass ahead, and I'll be making completely different decisions. And what worries me about myself today, I'll be talking about freely, openly, and and laughing at. And certainly that's been my experience. The things that I can talk about now, at a certain point in the not too distant past, I would have jumped in front of a bus rather than have to sit down and admit some of the things that I thought, felt, or had done. And now I realise that it's part of me. It's part of my growth. It's part of my learning. It's part of, I'd never have gotten to where I am if I hadn't gone to the point that I did. Because unfortunately, I'm stubborn. I'm so damn stubborn. I couldn't get it just by intellectualising. I had to feel it so badly in my body. And I had to see the reaction round about me before I could actually stop and say, hands up, surrender, what's next? So that's where we're going. It's inside. Why? What is making me? Why am I reacting this way? Because it's a reaction. It's not an action. It's not that you get up in the morning and you think, I'm going to go and see how many people I can hurt, or I'm going to, whatever it is I'm going to do. It's very much a reaction to how you're feeling about yourself and what somebody else, someone scratching your skin, scratching the wound, or poking you and prodding you until it's black and blue, and making you react like that. Of course, no one can make us react, but bringing that reaction to the forefront, so that why? What is it in this situation? What was it that person did that triggered this in me? Josh, I'm doing a video, so keep moving through the room, and I'll be finished shortly. because when I know what it triggers in me, I can start to, hi Caroline, oh, this is lovely. I've got all my favourite people jumping on. So when I know what it triggers in me, I can actually start to work on that. I can start to look at it, and I can start to decide to make a change in the way that I react, in the way that I show up. And I can let go of that behaviour. I can let go of those types of behaviours. And when I go in, and going back to what I said a minute ago, when I started, I couldn't admit to anyone, one, that I felt bad, one, that I had any flaws whatsoever. So I really am really, maybe it's because it's so dark. Does that make it any better? Do I look better? Can you just tell me if I look more normal like that, or was it better before? Because I look fuzzy like this, but before I looked like Morticia, that somebody was shining a spotlight in my face. I couldn't admit to any of these things at all. I couldn't admit to any of those feelings at all. And that meant that that I would react badly if somebody triggered a feeling in me. If someone triggered something that I loathed about myself, that would be enough for me to retaliate. It was a complete self-protection mechanism, and that is often what we see, both when we're giving it out and when we're on the receiving end of it. It's a protection mechanism to keep other people from hurting us, to keep us from having to look at ourselves. So recognizing that that's the case, I can start to change it. I can start to understand it, and I can start to make decisions on how I want to interact with people. It takes practice, it takes work, and it also takes a little bit of courage to actually be willing to ask, to find the people around about you that you can ask for help, that you can open your heart to, that you can say those uncomfortable things that you don't want to say. And of course, we can't do that with just anybody. It's not that, we turn up and that's good. The light's much better now, thank you. We've got to be very careful on who we choose to share those things with, because there are certain people that just aren't up to hearing it. They just don't know how to receive it. They panic, and they want to fix it, and they want to fix us, and they want to offer solutions. And as well as I do, that most of the time we don't want solutions. We just want to be heard. We want to feel that somebody's there, just accepting us exactly as we are, without trying to find the solution for us. So that takes a lot of bravery to be able to do that. Other thing, that I was thinking about today when I was thinking about, what solutions do we have available to us, is it's all about balance. It's all, I think it was Karine yesterday was asking somewhere what she should do, that she doesn't feel that she can really have those deep soul level conversations with her husband, but should she be forcing them or not? And it's really about balance. It's about knowing the person on the other side, knowing yourself. And one of the things for me is, I know that there are conversations that I could never have with my husband. I could never have with Marco, because he wouldn't get it. He's not on that wavelength, and he's frankly not interested. However, I can sit down and I can talk for hours to Caroline or to Kay or even to you, Monica. I can talk to so many other people on that level. I can go deep. I can talk crap. I can cry. I can really bare my soul. I've got that place to go, and I feel safe to do it now. So it's kind of, it's finding the balance, knowing your audience, knowing your so that's really awful, isn't it? That makes it sound that your friendships are audiences, but you know what I mean? Finding the people that can hold the space for you while you have to offload, or people that will talk as much crap back at you on whatever level you're at, going, and that's fine. And going back to the balance thing, so I was thinking about this idea that, it all comes down to good and bad and good and bad, and and I was getting really upset a few weeks ago about everything that I was reading online. It was all about narcissism, and narcissists are bad and empaths are good. And, at the end of the day, they're both controlling personalities. They just are controlling from different perspectives, or they can be controlling personalities. And the narcissist, by definition, tends to be that and only that. But the empath as well, through a different means, is trying to control. She or he is trying to control with love. If I throw love at you, if I throw understanding at you, then you'll change your behaviour and you'll become what I need you to be. So it's about recognizing that, there's no real good and there's no real bad. It's accepting all of ourselves and trying to keep that on as close to middle ground as possible, so that we're sharing, and when we're communicating with people, we're communicating from a place of connection as opposed to a place of manipulation. And really, it's so simple to fall into that manipulation, even with the best will in the world. And something that Caroline and I talk about, or have talked about a fair bit, is this idea that we know God's job better than He does. When we're praying or when we're thinking about the outcome that we would like, we find ourselves often looking for the outcome that we think should happen. I.e., we're making ourselves God, and when we're making ourselves God, we're taking away any room for letting God in. We start to manipulate situations, even with the best will in the world, to get the outcome that we believe is best for all parties concerned, rather than being able to say, okay, your will, I'm here and I'm going to be guided by you, but you show me, you guide me. Don't let me step on your toes. Kick me out the way and lead me down the right path. So the whole, we can't change other people. We can't change the situation. We can't even change the outcome. But what we can paradoxically do is change all of that when we get to the point that we're not trying to control and manipulate and come up with a solution. Be willing to do the work, to communicate really as honestly as you possibly can, but in a way that's about, hey, I don't feel good, and I'm telling you that because I want you to know that my reactions might be off at the moment. My reactions might not be great, but that's it. I want you to know. I want you to know that that's what's going on for me, as opposed to, I don't feel good at the moment, because when this happened, I felt like this, and and putting the onus on the other person to understand that there's that the change should be coming from them. And it's so easy to do. It's so easy to want to get in there and manipulate the situation for that outcome. And it's, again, when I use these words, they're kind of heavy words, manipulate and whatever, and they're not used in a way to make you feel bad. They're not used in a way to make you go off and beat yourself up. They're used in a way to really highlight what happens when we think we know the best outcome, and we don't. We don't. Not in our, not with our heads anyway. With our hearts and with our guts, sometimes we do. So again, it's about getting back to that place of intuition. It's about shushing the mind, shushing the thoughts, letting go of the expectation that we have for a particular outcome, and just being guided by our own intuition, which again is something that we go back to when we start going back inside, when we start looking at building a relationship with ourselves. A lot of the time that we're in this place, a lot of the time that we find ourselves in these emotionally abusive relationships, is because we're not in touch with ourselves. We're being drawn along by other people's words and other people, rather than their actions, or rather than what they're not saying. So it's really a case of stopping that, letting other people's, other people's words not be the guide, letting them go. I hear what you're saying, but I'm not feeling it. And how often does that happen? I mean, it's probably, if you took time to sit back and think about it, at least one conversation every day you would have with somebody where what they were saying wasn't what you felt they were giving out. Certainly, for me, a lot of the time I tended not to even go there because I didn't like that sensation. I didn't like the feeling that, because I felt that people were lying to me. What often is the case is they don't even understand. We don't even understand that we're doing it. We're so disconnected from ourselves that what we're saying we do believe is the truth because we're not in connection with our hearts or with our guts. So we're saying what we think we should be saying without really, putting the whole thing together. So I used to get so upset when I felt that people were lying to me until I realised that actually they're not lying. They don't know any better. And that's fine. I can then therefore adjust my behaviour and my reaction rather than getting dragged into this, I hate being lied to and I'm going to withdraw and I'm going to push you away and I'm going to eye roll and sulk and whatever. Self-knowledge is the tool, is the solution. And how we go about that is finding the courage to start looking at ourselves and understanding our behaviour, understanding the why behind it and understanding what we need to do to make the changes. And that doesn't mean that where you are at the moment isn't perfect. It doesn't mean that you haven't done the work by any stretch of the imagination. It just means that there's always more to be done. There's always more to be done, but don't force it. That's one of the biggest learnings for me is when I'm trying to get exactly everything I've said, but it's almost more difficult when you're in a place where you're trying to grow out of a situation or grow out of a behaviour, and you find yourself still trying to manipulate it to get to the end result. So it's really just letting it go, doing the work, but letting go. Being a bit lighter about your whole approach, and really being kind, loving, and gentle to yourself. When you're kind, loving, and gentle to yourself, it's so much easier to accept and love and be kind, loving, and gentle to other people. If we don't start and we don't learn with us, how on earth can we honestly and truthfully offer that to other people? And people feel it and people react, and you feel it and you react. So being that we're here, being that we have the knowledge, being that we're looking to live the best version of our lives possible, let's take the mantle and do that work for ourselves and watch how relationships change. And be very aware that sometimes they won't change. Be very aware that when we make the changes, other people may not be willing to fall into line. They may not be able to fall into line. It doesn't make them bad. It doesn't make them evil. It just means that that's not their path. And we can't make it their path. We can love them and wish them well. But if it's causing us so much pain, we can also let them go, emotionally and physically. So I hope that helped a little bit. I hope it was clear. As I say, I'm very, very tired tonight, and I'll do my daughter's here, so I can't talk particularly, but I'll do a video tomorrow on what I learned this week doing exactly this training and where it got me yesterday and today, which is interesting in itself. And on that, I'm going to wish you a very, very lovely evening, very lovely Friday evening, weekend, whatever it is. I will be back on Sunday. I put a message in the group asking you if you would prefer that I did a live stream like this on Friday. It's going to on Sunday rather. It's going to be a question and answer session. So if you get any questions, you drop them to me beforehand. Or would you prefer that we did it in the Zoom room, and we can do it live onto Facebook if we like, but we can do it in the Zoom room so we can actually all look at each other in the eye and we can have a discussion about it. I'm open to either. You can let me know what you would prefer, what works best for you. And with that, I wish you a very, very lovely weekend. I know weekends can be tough. I know, you know, when things aren't fantastic at home, the last place we want to be is home. But yeah, we're strong. We have all the resources within us. We have enough love in ourselves to love ourselves through it. So let's do that. Let's make this weekend about really, really nurturing and loving ourselves. And I love you, all of you. So have a lovely, lovely evening. Bye.